Hi, everybody. This is Anne Marie, the Ball Girl Will Travel, aka Ball Girl Will Travel. And welcome to my live. Hi, Margie. How are you? I thought it would be fun to talk about a fun topic today. Last week, I did my Ask Me Anything live, and one of the things people asked about was dating um, on travel. So I thought that would be a fun topic to talk about. I'm getting ready to take off for some traveling over the next couple of weeks. I'm gonna start traveling again, so it's at front of mind. I haven't like turned on my set my location to my first destination country yet, but I'm getting ready to do that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about um, dating on solo travel as a woman over 50, pros and cons, and these are all, of course, my experience, my opinions, um, and how I approach it. I've written an article in my blog post about this topic, and it will be at the link in bio. Hi, Belinda. I'll also put that link so you can read it. Some of the do's and don'ts and personal security stuff. I am not going to be talking that much about security, but I will say a couple of things because obviously, whether you're dating in the country where you live, in your neighborhood, wherever you are, I would say follow your heart, but take your brain with you. So there are things that you should be careful about. And obviously, if you are traveling in a foreign country, then you need to be careful, right? But I actually have had some really good experiences going out on dates abroad. So it's definitely a great way, I think, to get acquainted with a new city. It's a great way to learn about places to eat, things to do that are not going to be the typical tourist stuff. So I like doing that. I've been on some really great dates in different countries, London, um, Sicily come to mind. But it really comes down to, in my opinion, how you're thinking about it and what it is that you're trying to get out of the experience. For me, I'm not looking for a spouse. I'm not looking for, a love match and a lifelong partner, anything like that. I'm traveling and I'm interested in experiencing a country, and I kind of, and hopefully at a minimum, making friends. So I think about it in that way. I don't really think about it as, I'm going to meet my husband and I'm out here looking for a husband. And I'm not knocking those who approach, dating in that way. But at this point in my life, it's just not the thing that's top of mind for me. So what I usually do when I know that I'm going somewhere where I would like to go out on a date, like I'm getting ready to go to Sicily, among other places, to celebrate my birthday coming up. And so my plan is, if all things work out, to go on a couple of dates while I'm traveling. I'm going to be traveling to London, Paris, um, around Italy, and not just Sicily, but around Italy. So what I usually do is Tinder has, if you're using Tinder, a premium version of Tinder, not the free version, you can set your location for wherever you want in the world. They also have something called Global Passport, so they'll show you people from all over the world as well. But I will just set my location to the place that I'm going to be, and I start having conversations with people before I get there. So I kind of sort of start vetting people before I get to the location, so I can decide, whether I want to meet them, whether I want to go on a date. Um, the basic security rules of thumb are the same. I think you don't tell someone where you're staying. um, you don't even necessarily tell them that you're traveling alone. You just say you're going to be in the city, um, and then you have conversations like you would with any normal person that you meet, and you decide whether or not you like this person enough to want to meet them and go out. What I like about doing that is that usually they have great, restaurant suggestions. I'll often ask people about things that they like to do in their city that they think a person visiting for the first time should do. And I've gotten really great recommendations just having conversations. Sometimes it ended up being conversations with guys that I didn't even end up meeting for whatever reason, but I ended up finding a really good restaurant. Like one time I was getting ready to visit Querétaro, which is not that far from where I live here in Mexico, but it was for my first time. And I was talking to this guy, and he gave me a recommendation for a Chinese restaurant. I didn't even know there was Chinese restaurants in that city, but it was a really good Chinese restaurant, like really good Chinese food. And I would have never known, I would have never even known to even look for that if he hadn't mentioned it. And he also gave me really good recommendations for really good Mexican restaurant that I still go to. And we actually never ended up meeting, even though we still chat here and there on WhatsApp, but we never actually ended up meeting. But I had a really good experience on that trip just because I met this guy on Tinder and we were chatting, right? So I definitely think it's a good way to socialize, make friends, and also learn a lot, especially if you're going somewhere for the first time, learning a lot about a place without having to do a whole lot of research. Like right now, I'm doing a lot of research about, great things to do in one day in Paris. And if I were talking to someone in France, I would have been able to just ask them that question. But I'm only going to be in Paris and for one day, so it didn't make a lot of sense to me to do that. But that's kind of what I do. I don't know if any of you have thoughts, if any of you have been on dates um, while you're traveling, but I definitely will open up my Tinder and set it to the country that I'm going to be in. I usually try to do it a couple weeks before I arrive, and I just start talking to people. And I mean, it's worked for me so far. I don't try to give out, my whole life story and stuff like that just off of meeting someone, but I do, I tend to ask people a lot of questions and try to answer as few questions as I can just so I can get the information that I need. But I think, being careful about how much personal information you give out about yourself initially. I think it's a good idea to meet in a public place. I think it's a good idea to meet for the first time for coffee or um, something like that. I actually don't even like to commit to full lunches, meals, or breakfast or lunch. I usually will start with meeting someone for coffee. And then if I feel like it's somebody that I would want to spend more time with, then I might end up um, meeting them for lunch or for dinner. But I met a guy in Sicily and we went out on a really great date. And I mean, it didn't turn into anything, which is fine with me. But I'm still, trying to go through the messages with him to find the restaurant he took me to because it was really, really good. And I want to go back to the restaurant. So I had a really, really one of the best meals I've had in Italy in that on that date and dessert on that date. So I definitely think and that it's something to consider when you are dating. And like I said, to me, dating for me is like going to a new restaurant. I don't think about it in the way that I probably thought about it when I was younger. And so I don't put a lot of, concern into it and like, I hope he likes me and I hope, this is going to turn into something. I just am always like, I hope I like the person and they like me well enough to have good conversations as well as I hope I like the restaurant. I hope I like, those kinds of things. But it's really a great way I have found, even if you end up not meeting up with people, because I talked to a lot of people that I end up not going out with for whatever reason. Um, but I've had really great suggestions for things to do in different cities just by going out on dates with people or just having conversations with people in the country before I got there or upon arrival in the country. But I start talking to people um, on Tinder, and I use Tinder primarily because it's everywhere. I've started using Bumble as well. I don't like it as much. I know everybody says the opposite, but for why I'm using it, I have found Tinder to be more useful. Now, if I was looking for something serious, I would probably like Bumble more. But if I'm looking for tell me five top things to do in your city and do you want to show me that place, I just find Tinder is better for that. Because most of the people on Tinder ain't trying to be serious about anything anyway. So I mean, some of them are often surprised by the fact that I'm really not that interested in, I'm just kind of I got lots of questions about the city and things to do and so on. But most of them actually are really happy to have someone, come to their city and actually want to know non-tourist things to do and things to do that aren't what the typical person would want to do. So I found most of the time that it's a good way to like start talking to someone and having, conversation with someone you're just meeting. So that's kind of my take on dating. I haven't found that my age, I mean, I know that I don't necessarily look my age, so people never believe me when I tell them. So I mean, I date whoever I want. I actually tend to date men that are between 5 and 10 years younger than me because I just don't find men my age and older very particularly interesting in the in a lot of ways. Um, so I usually date people either my age or 5, 10 years in there somewhere. Um, so usually the men in their 40s. And so far it's gone well in terms of, traveling different countries, meeting new people, seeing different things. We'll test the theory again on some of my upcoming trips. But I really feel it's about, the way you think about it and what your expectations are and the level of expectations you set. But so far, I haven't had any bad experiences that I can point to, even in terms of conversations and interactions that didn't turn into dates. For the most part, I would say I haven't had any bad experiences. If I decide, because I can decide within a couple exchanges whether a person's a jackass or not. And the great thing is that you just, disconnect and you never have to speak to the person again. That's what I like about it. So, you just move on to the next person that you're talking to because if you're not looking for, I'm there for a good time, but not a long time. So it's like I'm gonna be in your city, this period of time, and I would love to have coffee, and you can tell me about yourself and things that you think are great things to do in your town or your city or your whatever. And I just find people really like doing that, even if sometimes they end up not being someone you decide that you actually want to meet for coffee, but they still give you information that can be useful for your trip. So I think it's a good thing to do no matter how old you are. Obviously, if you're looking for a life partner, and there's nothing wrong with being over 50 and looking for that, then you might approach it a little bit differently, but not that much differently because I feel like your vetting process might be a little bit different, but I also think it's a great icebreaker is asking someone, to tell you three things they would tell someone visiting their city for the first time to do. People love when I ask them that question. You know what I mean? So whether you're interested in talking to them ever again, you're getting information that's useful for you for the purposes of your visit. And then if you end up meeting up with them for coffee or even for dinner or whatever, that's like extra to me. But I've had really great experiences doing that. I tend not to talk a lot about how much I travel or things like that with people I just meet because depending on where you're traveling to. I mean, if you're traveling to Europe, it's not as big as a deal depending on where you're going. But I tend not to like to do that if I'm traveling to a low income country because people, equate travel with affluence. And I don't want people to think that I'm rich because I'm not. And people will come to that conclusion if you talk a lot about how much you travel. So I tend to not do that. I just say I'm visiting and I kind of leave it at that. But I don't usually lead with, I travel for a living or what I do. I find Americans tend to be ask people a lot more questions about what they do for a living when they meet them than people outside of the country. But in some places, people, do lead with, oh, so what do you do for a living? And I usually tend not to elaborate very much because I don't want someone to, come to the conclusion that I am, some rich woman traveling around and whatever, because that can also make you a target. So you have to be careful about, I think it's just good to be careful about how much information you initially give to someone about yourself. And obviously, things that I talk about all the time. One of the reasons that I don't like meeting people for like cocktails, I always like to meet for coffee. I've had people offer to meet for cocktails, and I will generally decline and instead say I would rather meet for coffee if I'm meeting them for the first time. And then if you're going to meet them even after coffee, I still think lunch is better than dinner. Unless they're fine as hell and you just are like, you know, I don't care. Then knock yourself out and do what you feel. We're all grown, right? But if initially I feel like okay, it's a nice person, I might go to lunch with them and get to know them a little bit more. before going to dinner, and just watch your alcohol and be careful, the usual things. Wash your drink. Don't let you don't get so loose that you're not keeping track of how much you're drinking, and don't ever get up and go to the ladies' room and leave your drink unattended and come back and drink from the same glass. Like, don't ever do that. Don't ask the person to watch your drink either, because you don't know them. So don't do that either. Always, like, if you're going to the bathroom, finish your drink and then go. But when you come back, do not drink out of an unattended glass under any circumstances. Be like, don't do that. I don't care what country you're in, just don't do that. And just be careful of how much you drink. I have a one cocktail rule if I'm out meeting someone that I don't really know. Even if I've like talked to them, I had coffee with them, my general rule is one cocktail. Two glasses of wine, one cocktail. That's just my rule. And it has served me well so far. So that's my rule that I continue to stick to. And that's my suggestion about that. Unless, I mean, if I'm out with my girlfriends and we meet somebody that's different, and I tend to still be the person who drinks the least because I just like to know what's going on. And I figure if one of my friends, I have a friend that I do travel with sometimes, one of my best friends, if she drinking a lot, I can't be drinking a lot too. Somebody got to be sober enough to know what's going on. So I usually will try to be the person who's sober, so that if she's like, oh, he said we should go to this place, let's go. And I'm like, I want to know who's all going to be there, where it is, what street it's on, and we'll meet you over there. The last time that happened, I was like, well, I tell you what, you give us the address, we're going to go do some other things, and we'll meet you over there later. And that's what we did, and it was fine. But I didn't feel that her faculties were such that she could be making those kinds of choices. But since I had not been drinking, I was in a position to be like, yeah, we don't know you. We not getting a car going nowhere with you, but we'll meet you up there. Right. So I definitely do not recommend getting in cars with people. I'm not even big on sharing Ubers with people I just met. In foreign countries, I'm like, I'm going to call my car. You call your car. It's very nice meeting you. Have a good night. You going this way, I'm going that way. I don't let people walk me back to where I'm staying because I'm not interested in them knowing where I'm staying. And I don't have any problem telling people I just met you and I don't feel comfortable. I've said it to people. And if they want to be offended, that's really not my problem. But my safety and security is my problem. So I don't have any problem. And most times people are not offended, right? It just means that you have some damn sense, right? So I've said to people, I don't feel comfortable. Thanks for offering to walk me, but I'm good. Or I'm just going to take a taxi. And, if you want to do something later in the week, give me a call. You have my number, right? But, don't be pressed, because there's never any reason to be pressed. And don't make bad decisions. I feel like a lot of times people go, and it doesn't have anything to do with age. People our age, people younger, people older, people make bad decisions sometimes, right? Because we're all humans. So it's just really thinking about these things before you go, and having a plan for how you're going to do things. And even if he's fine as hell, generally speaking, if he's fine today, he'll be fine tomorrow. So, especially if you're just meeting somebody for the first time, I always think it's best to just not drink a lot, use common sense, think things through. If you don't drink a lot, it makes it a lot easier for you to be acting from a place of thinking versus being, what's the word I'm looking for? That happens. Your inhibitions tend to float away the more you drink, right? So, as I sip my rosé, so I always think it's better to like have a limit, and especially around alcohol, and don't drink excessively when you're just meeting someone for the first time. Anybody got anything to share about their exploits? I can't be the only person who's been out on a date while they're traveling. Can't just be me. Cannot just be me. Hi, who's on here? MJ, Ashula Sharon. Hi there. Belinda, I already said hi to you. KB, hi everybody. You're drinking Pinot. I'm drinking my usual rosé. MJ said she agrees. Keep it loose and light. Yeah, I just think, it's not anything to be stressed about. It's just you're meeting somebody new. And that's kind of why I like to change my location, because by the time I usually have met somebody, we've had several conversations. If I decide I like talking to them, we might already be talking on WhatsApp. So by the time I meet them, I kind of have, have a kind of better sense of who the person is that I'm talking to, but you really don't know. I mean, I don't believe that we ever really, really know anybody, but that's just my personal opinion. But the rules that you set should apply. It doesn't really matter whether you like the person a lot, based on the conversations you're having with them and so on. I really think sticking to having, certain boundaries around the first time you meet, and a person that really likes you and is interesting in you will respect your boundaries, in my experience, whatever those boundaries might be. People who want to push your boundaries or try to convince you to do something different aren't people that care anything about you, because people that care about you respect your boundaries. So I just find, generally speaking, that approach to dating has served me well. I definitely recommend it. If you're a single woman over 50 or not, dating is a great way to learn about a new city really fast. It's a great way to make friends on the ground before you get there. It's a great way to do a lot of things, right? So I definitely don't think it should be like, oh my God, I'm not going to do that. And oh, the safety, and they might do something to you. I mean, bad things happen everywhere, and you could not go on nary one date and still have a bad experience. So I don't think that's the reason why I wouldn't do it. I do find that doing that has been a good way to meet new people and learn about that. Also, going on tours. You all know I believe in going on tours. I love to go on walking tours in every place that I go. It's one of the first things that I do, because it's a great way to learn about a city and to meet new people. And I like to do food tours. I have a question. Shula Sharon, I hope I'm saying your name right. Do you feel like you're treated differently dating abroad in Black or brown countries versus European countries? I have never been on a date in a Black or brown country so far traveling. Have I? Well, I'm in a brown country now. That's no, I've been in dates in Mexico, but I live in Mexico, so I don't really think about Mexico as a foreign country, but I guess it kind of is. When you say being treated differently, I don't know that I feel like I've been treated differently per se. I mean, I feel I've been treated well. I mean, I've dated in the United States, but I haven't dated anyone in the United States in a while. So, and I do feel dating is a very individual thing. So I don't ever like to be like, the people in this country are better than the people in this country. I can only just talk about the experiences that I've had. But I have I do feel like I get asked out more, even not being on apps. I mean, I've been asked out just being in a restaurant having dinner, like in Portugal. This guy asked me out. He was Portuguese and Black. He was very attractive. I did not end up going out with him. Long story, but I would have if I had had more time. But I don't. I feel like the interactions that I've had with men abroad have been overall pleasant, even when it turns out to not be someone that I end up going out with. Um, I don't feel like I've been treated. I don't like the word. I don't know. I feel like I've been treated very well when I dated outside. I definitely have had really good date experiences outside the US versus the ones that I've had in the US. But I haven't dated anyone in the US since probably 2020, 2019, 2020, 2020, 2021, maybe. Let me think. Yeah, 2021, probably 2020, 2021 time. Um, but I mean, that's my caveat, but I will say I've been treated well dating abroad. Um, I've definitely been treated well. I feel like, questions like this video was circulating now where the girl and the guy are, I don't know if anybody's seen it. I shared it in my Facebook group today, where the girl and the guy are out at a restaurant, and the bill comes, and there's this exchange about, you have to see it. But I've never had that kind of experience abroad. Like, there's never any question about who's paying the check. And one time when I even offered, the person was very offended that I would even offer to leave the tip. And tipping is really not a thing outside the US anyway. but he was kind of bristled at. Yeah, I mean, he chalked it up to me being American, but he was kind of like, no, right? Um, if wedding bands, if you don't want male attention, I'm single and traveling to Portugal. I don't do any of that. I like male attention. I guess if you don't want male attention, you could do that. I'm trying to think if I ever did that. I think I did it. Where was I? I did it when I went to Tunisia at the recommendation of our security person. And in retrospect, I'm not sure that it was necessary. And he didn't recommend that I wear it, but he just was like, they sometimes people have interactions differently, treat you differently. And so I was talking to another person who travels a lot, and that was a suggestion she made. But he had raised the thing, if you're a woman traveling by yourself, then people will have questions. And sometimes if you wear a wedding, and then she was like, well, if you wear a wedding band, nobody will bother you. I think I maybe wore it one time and then I didn't because I just thought it was silly. Um, so no, I've never done that. I've heard of people doing it. I feel like if you feel like that'll make you feel better and you don't want any male attention, you could try it, but I don't think that necessarily stops people. Some people are attracted to wedding bands. So I'm not sure that's necessarily going to help, and I'm not sure you really need that in Portugal. Portugal is very safe, in my opinion. So I don't think it's necessary, but you can do it if it's going to make you feel more comfortable being by yourself for the first time. Then sure, do it. But I wouldn't do it because I don't think it's necessary, especially not in Portugal. And I kind of like male attention. So yeah. I don't do things I don't do when I'm traveling solo or really even when I'm traveling with friends. I don't tend to walk anywhere by myself at night. I mean, I've done it, but I try not to do it on a regular basis. I generally will try to take an Uber, a taxi. An Uber and works really well in Portugal, by the way. I used it a lot. So like when I was out at night at a restaurant, they had live music. Trying to remember the name of the restaurant right now because I would even tell you to go there. It was really good. What's the name of that restaurant? Um, it was owned by a Ghanaian, a guy from Guinea-Bissau. It was really good. What's the name of that restaurant? And they had live music. I think Wednesday to Saturday or something like that. It was really nice. But I took Ubers. Even though I could have walked there from where I was staying, I took an Uber there instead. Now, I feel like one night I did end up walking back to my place by myself and it was nighttime, but nobody bothered me. I think I did it like the first night because I wanted to see how far I was from somewhere and I walked. But then I found myself going up a hill and I was like, not doing that again. There's lots of hills in Portugal if you're going to Lisbon, especially. Um, but generally speaking, I recommend taking Ubers at night rather than walking places. I have done it, but I don't recommend it. I think it's better to not walk by yourself at night. I don't care how safe the place is supposed to be. I just think it's best to not do it as a woman in a new place that you don't have a lot of familiarity with. I remember doing it one night in Palermo, and I can't remember how because the place was so close. Where I was so close to where I was staying, but then all the streets start to look the same. The little narrow streets start to look the same, and I went up the wrong street, and then I got lost, and it was nighttime. So then you start getting stressed out, and then people are walking by you, but nobody was paying me any attention. Um, but I was like, I'm not doing this again. I should have just took an Uber, right? But I was like, oh, it's a nice evening. It was early in the evening, like maybe 7, 8ish, and I was like, oh, I'll just walk back. And then I got lost. So I definitely don't do what I did. Take an Uber at night. Like walk all you want all day long, but in the evening, if you're going to be by yourself, take a taxi or take an Uber. So yeah, I mean, I know I've heard of the wedding band idea. I've especially heard of it for people traveling in the Middle East and places like that by themselves. The only time I did it was when I was going, like I said, to Tunisia. But I think in retrospect, I don't think I needed it. Um, where have I had the best? So far, the best date I had was in the one I had in Sicily. I also had a really good date in London. Um, but my favorite was the one I had in Palermo. That was really, and it was just really because the restaurant was so good, the food was good. He was nice enough, but it wasn't him. It was really the restaurant and the food. It's probably what I remember most was how good the restaurant was. The host was a sweetheart, and it was a really nice restaurant. The food was outstanding. So that's probably one of my favorite dates that I've been on. Hi, Lily Bell. So I mean, I wish I could say that it was really romantic and we ended up, but no, I just had some. I love food. I'll tell people like, take me to a good restaurant, and that's half the battle. Um, but sometimes you just don't click romantically with people, and that's okay, right? Or sometimes people click romantically with you, and you don't click romantically with them. That happens to me a lot. But I can, I can sit and have a conversation with almost anybody. So we had a really great dinner. We had a really great conversation. Um, but I just, I enjoyed it. It was great. It was a really good restaurant atmosphere. Food was fantastic. Wine was great. Dessert was outstanding. So that's probably one of my favorite dates. And then the date I went on in London was really nice. I really enjoyed that date as well. And he was hot. He was fine. Um, so that was fun too. But would I move abroad for love? I already live abroad. Well, that's the first thing. I don't know. That's a hard one. I can't see it. I would never, I don't believe in ever saying I would never do anything. He would have to be one hell of a guy. I don't see it. I mean, I just don't see myself uprooting my life and moving somewhere for somebody. I'm not saying it wouldn't happen, but I don't see it. And you guys would never know about it if it happened because I'm not somebody that broadcasts I know a lot of people are on social media sharing all their business, and I'm not one of those people. So you're not going to see me in Instagram posts holding hands and doing cute dances and any of that. I just find some of that stuff kind of cringy, and I would not monetize. If I'm in love with somebody, I'm not going to monetize my relationship with them. So y'all might see me pop up somewhere, but you wouldn't necessarily know that I'm there because of someone. And I'm not saying I wouldn't, but it would have to be one hell of a situation. I'm not saying never, though. It's possible. Anything's possible. I could win the lottery. That's possible too. But I don't see it. He'd have to be one hell of a guy because I like my life just the way that it is. So I don't know. But maybe for a Sicilian, maybe because I wouldn't mind living in Italy. So that's possible. It depends on the country, I guess, as I think about it more. If he lived in a country that I wouldn't mind living in, but let's say he lived in Iceland, probably not. So it would depend. I really think it would depend. I don't see it happening at this point in my life, but I would never say, oh God, no, I would never do that. I would never say that. It's possible. But like I said, y'all will never know. Sorry. I just think some things aren't for don't need to be monetized or broadcast. I don't think it's, Truckerette said that's always the wrong thing for female to do is relocate for him. I completely disagree with you. I think everyone should do what feels right to them. I think one of the biggest mistakes people do with relationships is worrying about what other people would do. Right? Your relationship is your relationship. Other people's relationship is their relationship. So if it feels right for you to pack up your stuff and move to another country to be with somebody, I say go for it because you are not a tree. If it don't work out, you can pack up your stuff and go back from whence you came. Because I know people who have relocated to another neighborhood for somebody and it didn't work out. So it don't even have anything to do with moving for another country. I know people who sold their house and moved, across town to be with somebody and then it didn't work out. Sometimes things don't work out, but nothing beats a failure but a try, right? So I believe you should always be hopeful, but just be thoughtful at the same time that you're hopeful, right? But I'm not saying I would never do it, and I would never say it's wrong for a female to relocate for a man. If you think a man should move for you, then you should be able to move for them, right? As well, if the circumstances make sense, right? Because, like I said, if the person lives in a country that I would consider living in, I might consider it if other things align as well that are important to me, then I would consider it. But it would have to be one hell of a guy. That's all I'm saying. and it would definitely have to be somewhere that I would like to live. I wouldn't just move any old place, but that's me. But I think, I know people who have done it and it's worked out well for them. And then I know people who haven't, right? So I've seen each thing. I never judge what happens to somebody else. So even though I've seen it be turn out really badly, like I said, I know someone who didn't even move outside the country, but they moved in with someone, and it was a horrible. Everything went to hell, right? So I don't live my life in absolutes. If I did, I wouldn't have the life that I have. So I always think it's a bad idea to be like, I would never do this, I would never do that. You don't know what you would do. If the circumstances are right, you just don't know what you would do. You know what you believe you would do, but you don't really know what you would do until you're in it. Hey, well, at least that's my opinion. Catching my first live is not a good idea to broadcast your relationship. You know, it's not good for me. I see people do it and they on there with the whatever. I just saw a video before I got on here with somebody doing the whole thing with their husband, and they look as cute as a button, like peas and carrots. But that would not be me. I just feel like, to me, that's not something that I want to monetize. If I meet someone and I think that they're wonderful and they're the one and all of that kind of stuff, I'm not sharing that with social media, because I really do believe, if you have to. My mom used to always say, if you tell them about the beginning, you got to tell them about the end. And I'm not interested in telling about you the beginning, because and then I have to tell you about the end. So whatever happened to so and so. So I'm not going to be doing that. Is Shula Sharon? I'm always concerned about being a fetish to other men when dating abroad. Oh, I'm dating a black woman. There is some of that. I've definitely experienced some of that, but I don't care. If I'm getting what I need out of it, I really don't. I just don't spend my time thinking about that, because I'm not planning to marry any of these people. I'm not even necessarily planning to see some of these people ever again. So I don't care. I just don't think about, oh, well, I hope he's being with some. There are places where people don't see black people. So how would they ever date one? Somebody's got to be the first one. So, if I'm looking to date for somebody seriously, and I have dated people of other races seriously, my ex-boyfriend was white, but I wasn't the first black woman he had ever dated. And I made sure to ask these are things that I ascertained before I even would even seriously talk to him, because I wasn't interested in being the first, because that was a different situation. But I'm dating for travel. I don't care if I'm the first black woman they've ever went out. I'm probably, even if I'm not the first black woman, definitely first bald woman most of them have gone out with, right? People are attracted to me for very specific reasons. So if I spent time like interrogating every single reason somebody was attracted to me, I would never go out on a date ever again for the rest of my life. So I don't do that. I'm interested in trying an unconventional relationship on my next go around, where we're together but live apart in the same city. High vibe. I actually have a friend who was married. Now it looks like it's not going to work out, but they were married for quite some time and lived separately. Um, and then I knew someone that I worked with that they lived together, had children, grandchildren. When I met them, they had already been together for 20 something years and they were never married. Right. So I really feel like whatever relationship works for you and that person, the biggest mistake people make is comparison is the thief of joy, is comparing themselves to anybody else and comparing your relationship to anybody else's and telling people your business, right? As long as you're treated with respect and kindness and love and empathy, I feel like have a good time. Do it however you need to do it. I think I would have a very hard time at this point in my life living with someone. So living with someone would be difficult. So I could definitely be in a relationship with someone and never live with them. Right. Now, if they lived somewhere else in the world, that would be something to figure out. But I could definitely not like be in the same town and not live with somebody and be perfectly happy. I don't really feel like I would necessarily be very happy living with somebody. But if they were the right person, anything is possible. Right. I think anything is possible. And so it just depends, because I mean, relationships are not one-sided. It's about what you're getting and what the other person is getting as well. So if you're both getting what you need, then everybody makes, adjustments, right? To make sure that each other is happy. So to me, I don't know. Shula Jerome said, I would move for Michelle Maroney. Wouldn't we all? Would we not all move for him? I don't know if I would move, but I would definitely spend a whole lot of time in Italy if he asked me to. Um, Chocorette said, I think fetish is just fine for me. Because my thing is, I don't know. To me, if somebody wants to date a black woman because they think they're attractive and they've always felt that they were attractive, but they've never dated one before because they would see them on TV or elsewhere, but none of them lived where they lived. And then they meet you and they want to date you, they want to take you out. Would I say I'm not going out with you because you've never dated a black woman before? Probably not. I mean, it's really about spending time and listening to the things that people say that will give you an idea of where their head is at. But there are a lot of places in the world where there are no black people, right? So it's quite possible that you could be the first one that they go out with. T said, just doing things. I'm in the process of selling my house to start traveling, but I'm honestly shook about doing it by myself. I'm sure I'll get over this quickly, but any advice on finding travel buddies? I sold my house 2 years ago and moved to Mexico. So I don't think that I'm special or magical or anything, but I wasn't afraid about any of it. Once I decided that I was doing it, I just did it. I don't have advice. I mean, I think joining, well, here's one thing you can do. Joining groups for women, like I have a group for women who love to solo travel or want to solo travel. There's the Exodus Summit. There are other Facebook groups. Finding groups with like people that you can find people that are interested in the same thing like you. And there are a lot of travel groups. There are travel groups for Black women as well. There's Picky Girl Travels the World has a group. I'll put some of them in the links descriptions for you guys. But that's a great way to meet people who might be looking for travel buddies too. One of the reasons why I decided to start doing meetups in 2024, where I'm going to meet up with some of my followers in different places in the world, is because I realized that not everybody is like me. And some people, it is scary to some people to just up and get on a plane by themselves and go somewhere and not know anybody, as well as it's scary to pack up everything and move to another country, right? So, but you're very brave for doing it because the average person would never do that. So you should pat yourself on the back for the fact that you've even decided to do it. And, it's a new experience. So having trepidation about it, I think is normal and natural, right? As long as it doesn't stop you from doing it, go forth and do, even if you're afraid, do it afraid. However you got to do it, just do it. You will be glad that you did. But I would definitely say start by joining some groups on Facebook for women who solo travel, and that'll be fun. One of the great things about doing tours, I find, is that's another way to meet people, both male and female. I've made friends meeting people on on trip tours. I just made a new friend when I was in Colombia. I made two friends in Colombia. One of my really good friends I met on a plane going to Australia by myself. So, everywhere you go, if you're open, you'll be surprised. You will, if you want platonic friends, male friends, you'll make some while you travel. Because I actually feel like when I've been traveling and meeting men, I just have found like most of them were fine with just being friends. Because I am pretty upfront about what I'm looking for and what I want and whatever, right? So, the people who just are trying to get laid usually stop talking to me really fast. The people who are, open to the possibility that they might get some or they might not, we'll talk longer, right? So if you just want to make friends, and I think doing tours when you're on travel is a great way to do it. And being clear about, I wouldn't necessarily be on dating apps if that's what you're looking for, but I think doing tours, walking tours, is a really great way. Food tours is another great way. There are even bar crawl tours now that you can find on Viator. That's another great way to meet people as well. I definitely prefer my own bedroom and bathroom. I don't want to share my bedroom. Truckerette said that. I feel you on that. That's why I'm not sure I could live with somebody, because the idea of sharing a bedroom and a bathroom, I don't know that I could do that. KB said my grandparents were married, but lived separately until he died. My grandmother came into some money when I was 5 and moved across town. Initially, my grandfather was upset, but he got over it. Your grandparents were very progressive. I love that. I just think whatever works for people is what they should do. I've always felt that way, um, because it's going to work or it's not going to work. And I don't believe everything. I know, marriage is supposed to be death till death do us part, but sometimes it doesn't work out that way. Sometimes it's till next year. Sometimes it's till 20 years down the road, because people change and grow. And if they're not able to change and grow together, then they change and grow apart, right? And so sometimes that happens too. It doesn't mean that you don't learn and grow and have good memories from whatever that relationship was. So sometimes things last forever, sometimes they don't. I just think, you know, people have a difficulty, accepting the idea that sometimes everything isn't going to last. But if you're willing to be evolve and change and grow together, then it can last. Because maybe when you just got married, you liked living together. Then you get older and you realize that you probably get along better if you don't live in the same house or sleep in the same room. Sometimes people sleep in separate rooms or separate parts of the house. Doesn't mean they don't love each other. That means that that's what it takes for them to be able to stay together. So I love that story about your grandparents. That's pretty cool. High Vibe said, it seems like traveling solo is the best way to meet people, friends, or potential dates. I don't know. I mean, I meet people when I travel with my friends, but I will say I definitely meet more people traveling solo, because when you're with your friends, it's a little different. But I have a friend who has never met a stranger. This is the first year she and I probably not, well, since COVID blew over, going to be together on my birthday, because we had a tradition for the last several years until COVID that we always went somewhere together for my birthday. She has never met a stranger. She's like, she put the E in extrovert, right? So when we travel together, we meet a ton of people because she talks to everybody, right? I tend to be a little bit more, conservative in that way, but I do tend to talk to people when I'm on tours and things like that. But not just random people in the restaurant, random people on the street, random people. Like, she talks to everybody. So when I'm with her, I meet people by default. But I do feel like most of the time when I'm with friends, you don't meet as many people because they're your circle the whole time. So I think traveling solo, you're right, is a really good way to meet new people, and have friends and potential dates. Um, KB said we saw my grandfather every week, and they had Sunday dinner together every weekend. Occasionally went to church and other places together. They sound very, very interesting. Your grandparents. That's pretty cool. And your grandmother is 94 and still getting her Social Security. That's awesome. That's pretty awesome. My dad is 91 this year. Um, that's pretty awesome. I just think whatever works for people is what they should do. And I just think the biggest mistake, even traveling, it's like, if you don't feel, hi D Walker, if you don't feel comfortable going out on dates when you're solo and traveling, don't do it. If it's going to give you anxiety and stress and you feel you got to do all these extra things to make sure that this person don't, throw a bag over your head and put you in the trunk, don't do it. Do some walking tours, do some group tours, do some, food tours. I love tours when I'm on solo travel. And then other times I just wander about by myself. But do some group tours where you'll meet other people and you get to decide how much you want to interact with them, right? Hi, Crystal. But I definitely think changing my location on Tinder when I'm getting ready to go somewhere works for me. I like men. I like the company of men. I particularly like the company of attractive men. So I will be dating for as long as I can. Um, but it doesn't mean that I don't necessarily have interest in being married or anything like that. I really have no interest in being married. But I mean, I would be if I met the right person, whatever that even is, then I would never say, oh, I'll never do this or I'll never do that. But when I'm traveling, that's really not what I'm thinking about. So it's usually, for me, it's a part of travel research, and it's a great way to meet new people, make new friends. Um, you know, and go out and do things that you want to do with someone of the opposite sex sometimes. It's fun doing that. Um, but I'm always kind of like, I'm here for a good time, not a long time. So it's not going to be, me latching on to somebody and then, crying at the airport. I mean, I've seen that and I always find it amusing, but that's just not me. So it's like, this was fun. You message me on WhatsApp whenever you want. Bye. And I mean, I have people message me still on WhatsApp that I've met in other countries, and that's cool. That's really cool. But it's not to me, it's not a romantic attachment for me. It's somebody that I met wherever I met them. So that's kind of how I think about it. So and I think whatever works for you is what you should do. But I kind of like to do it because it's a great way about learning about somewhere, experiencing things you wouldn't experience otherwise, and having the company, of someone if you want to have that. So for me, that works. Any other questions or comments on this subject? Bonnie said, "I like the way you go through life." Oh, thank you. I like it too. It's working for me. I wish I had done it sooner, to be honest. But whenever you start, it's a good thing, right? And when I say start, it's not even about moving abroad. It's like whenever you start living your life the way you want is a good thing, whatever that looks like for you. That's my thing. However, whatever that looks like for you, get about the business of pursuing it relentlessly, whatever your ideal life looks like, because this is not a dress rehearsal, ladies. That's all I can tell you. And life feels long, especially when you're younger, but it's very, very short. And so go about the business of living your life, your ideal idea of your life to the best of your ability every single day of your life. Don't be doing stuff you don't want to be doing. You know, how do you know that this was the life I wanted to live? Because I thought about it for a really long time. I would always be like, if this happened, I would move abroad. If that happened, I would do this. If money, I used to be, if money was no object, I would do this thing. And then my coach finally asked me, why do you believe that you can't move abroad if that's why you want to do it? Who told you that you need to have like all this money to do it? Right. So it's things that we tell each other and often excuses that we make so that we don't have to do the work. Um, just doing things. Since I was 16, I was someone's girlfriend, then a wife, and back to girlfriend. 42, and this is my first time single. I've never even dated. Want to learn more about who I am, but dating internationally. Just sounds just doing things. That's your name, actually. Just doing things. That's a cool name. Sounds like a fun adventure. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think most of us don't figure out who we are until we're past 40, to be honest. Because in the first part of your life, you're doing what your parents tell you, you're doing what your friends tell you, you're doing what everybody else tells you, and what you see on TV and other places as how you're supposed to live as a woman, that this is what is expected of you. Right. And as Black people, then we have the other burdens that we have to carry on top of that. And as Black women, like where everybody else is horse, is what I call it, not mule, horse. Right. Because as I explained once in a post, mules are stubborn and will refuse to keep going after a while. Horses go until they drop dead. We're horses, and we have to stop being other people's horses. We have to. It would do us well to be mules. We are the world's horses, and we have to stop being other people's horses and start doing what we want to do and living how we want to live. And the sooner you get to that, the better. Whatever it looks like for you, right? But when I leave this mortal coil, I want people to know that I lived my life how I wanted. I may not have gotten to it right away, but when I did it unapologetically, without any explanations. I always say never complain and never explain, right? You live your life how you want. You don't owe anybody an explanation for how you live it. Renaissance of consciousness, totally agree. High vibe. I used to say my biggest regret was not doing a semester abroad or looking for a transfer of the job to one of the company's overseas offices. Well, you're still here, so you don't have to keep regretting it. I mean, when I was younger, I didn't really think about travel as much because I was busy, wasting my time with somebody's son and just doing other things that I didn't need to be doing, and then going to school and then doing all these other things. But From the time I started traveling, I knew that I wanted to keep doing it, but it was a question of like, how could you do it? Because you just always think that you need money, and you do need money, but there's lots of ways to make money. And if you don't live in the United States, it's more financially attainable to travel if your cost of living is lower, right? So right now it's working for me, and I'm very grateful to be able to live my life the way that I do because I'm very happy living my life the way that I do. But how I live my life is not necessarily what other people would want. Everybody else isn't, everyone wouldn't be happy with my life the way it is. So I really think it's about figuring out what your ideal is and then figuring out how to get there, right? Not saying I want to live like this person, but just thinking in a perfect world, here is how I would like to live my life. And then you do what you feel is necessary to get there, right? Because, like I said, comparison is the thief of joy. Don't compare your life to anybody else's, but just figure out what a happy life looks like to you and then do everything you can to live it, and do it without apology or explanation. Because I think we spend too much time worrying about what other people think and convincing other people of our value and convincing other people of that we're right to do the things that we don't. I don't do any of that. I live how I want, and I don't even just have discussions with people about how I live my life. I live my life how I want. Leslie Layla, wise words. I'm 54 and just now starting to live my life instead of being everything for everyone else. You always come up empty handed when you do. And that's true. I think trying to please other people is a fool's errand. Trying to make other people understand the choices that you make, that you're comfortable with making, is a fool's errand. It's a waste of time. Bonnie, I've always had wanderlust. I was a brave when I was younger. Now I'm older. I'm doing a lot of second guessing. Stop doing that. That's the only thing I could tell you. Then stop doing it. But I think it's all comes from the same thing, that we spend a lot of time comparing and a lot of time caring about what other people think. That's where the second guessing comes from. It comes from other people's opinions. So once you stop listening to other people's opinions, your life becomes very, very simple. And I was lucky that pretty early in my life, I was never someone that was particularly that concerned about what other people thought of me and how much people liked me. A lot of us, especially women, are very obsessed with being liked. And that would be a whole other video. But it doesn't serve us well. Um, I just try to live a life, a life that of integrity. I try to be empathetic as much as possible. I try to be kind. I try to treat people the way that I would like to be treated. But I understand that I'm not always going to do it perfectly. None of us are, because we're human beings. So you do the best that you can, and you just live your life as best as you can. But you can't spend your time worrying all the time about whether other people understand and whether other people endorse the way that you choose to live your life. Renaissance of consciousness. I'm currently getting rid of my stuff, moving to Mexico September, not renewing another lease in the US. So excited. Congratulations. About the getting rid of your stuff. At some point I don't really do videos about moving abroad. It's not really my thing. But hold on to the things that you really like. I see people preaching this gospel, you got to get rid of everything and dump and get rid of all the stuff. I don't know. That's just not for me, but that's just me. If you have things that you love, don't feel that you have to get rid of those things just so you can move. That's all I'm going to say. Obviously, get rid of things that you weren't using in the first place. And God knows, in the land of capitalism and consumerism, most of us have a whole lot of things that we're not using and don't need. Definitely do that. But if there's a pair of shoes you love or a great handbag that you love, don't feel that you have to get rid of those things. Again, because such and such on social media said so. That's all I'm going to say. T, just doing things. Have you been to Thailand? Yes, I have. I've been to Bangkok and Chiang Mai. It was okay. I didn't love Thailand. I wanted to, but I didn't. There are things I liked about it. I also went to Koh Samui, which was pretty. I didn't get to Phi Islands, but I went to Koh Samui, which is way less expensive than Phi, and it was very pretty. If you all would like me to do a video about Thailand, I can. But yeah, I've been to Thailand. I can tell you the pros and cons and what I liked about it and what I didn't like about it. Yes, congratulations again to Renaissance of Consciousness. Yeah. You will, I mean, I love living in Mexico. It's been an adjustment. Anytime you move somewhere else, it's an adjustment. So be prepared that you're going to have to make some adjustments, but they have all been adjustments well worth it. I love living here. It's a wonderful country. People are amazing. The food is fantastic. So I can't say enough about how much I love living here. Um, I am keeping some of my art, my favorites, but donating and selling the rest. Thank you for the advice. You're welcome. I'm just, I see a lot of that and it bothers me because yes, you probably will need to, I mean, you probably should get rid of things you don't want, but if there are things that you love, keep them. Whatever they are, keep them. I want to really live in Europe, so trying to figure it out. You can figure it out. If that's what you want to do, then do your homework, do your research, join groups relevant to the places that you're thinking about living, and read and you'll search for questions that you have instead of asking them. Just search the questions because oftentimes people have already asked the questions that you have and find out how other people respond and how they're living in different places that you might be interested in living in, because there are places in Europe that are lower cost and then there are places that are higher cost. So don't assume that they're all going to be expensive. um, and then go do your homework about rent and things like that, and the cost of living, and their websites that you can go to also compare cost of living and things like that. But I do feel like doing research in Facebook groups were very, very helpful for me when I was planning to move to Mexico. But just know that you're never going to know the answer to everything, and don't let that be the reason you don't act. Because I think a lot of us spend a lot of time in these groups navel gazing, and everybody's saying the same thing and nobody's doing anything. And it's important to act because, like I said, this is not a dress rehearsal. So if you want to move to Europe, go move to Europe. You're not a tree. If you get somewhere you don't like, you move somewhere else. Right. And don't be like, I got to research for 2 years before I move, or I got to research forever and a day. Um, I just think that's just excuses people make to not act. So if you actually want to do the thing, and realize it's not going to be all perfect, but it's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. What's your thought on language when you travel? I think you should do your best to learn as much as you can. Learning a new language is hard. I'm trying to learn Spanish and it's hard. Okay. But it's still something that you should try to do. Um, if you want to learn, if you're moving somewhere and you want to learn the language, then I would say the first thing to do is start learning like how to say certain common phrases. You don't need to sit there and try to learn verb conjugate. The main thing, and I have a sister who speaks Spanish fluently, is learning how to say important things first, learning everyday phrases and common phrases, and then graduating from that. And an easy way to do it is to interact with local people. And most places, like there are lots of places that have language programs in the libraries and other places. There are lots of people in the country who also want to learn English. So they're always happy to talk to you because you're helping them and they're helping you. So just look into like language exchange programs. I like italki a lot. It's a really great way, for a low cost way, to have someone to talk to in the language that you're trying to learn. But just start by, and Duolingo is great too. But italki and combined with Duolingo is really good. But my biggest problem is I don't feel like I speak it enough. My sister fusses at me about that a lot, and she's correct. The only way you're going to learn is to use it. Now, if you're traveling around, there's no way for you to learn every single language. I mean, you can learn. There's some people who are polyglots like my sister, and they learn languages easily. Um, but I use Google Translate a lot. I like usually will put the phrases, common phrases, and then I download them and save them in my phone, so that even if I don't have internet, I still will have the primary language in the country I'm visiting downloaded on my phone. Then I take it off later. But I always have Spanish on my phone. I just added Italian, right? I'm only going to be in Paris for one day, but I'm gonna put some phrases in French because the Parisians, if you don't speak English, they get really salty with you. Um, but I think that if you're traveling, just use Google Translate and just make an effort. People just appreciate when you try. Like I was in Portugal jacking up the Portuguese phrases that I had in my phone and speaking to people in Spanish because some of the words were similar, but people were nice and they understood that I was trying. And then at one point, the guy in the Starbucks corrected me and explained to me what I was saying wrong. And I had been saying it for days and no one had explained it, had corrected me, right? Um, but just like good morning, good afternoon, good night, please, thank you. Can you help me? Where do you find like donde, which is in Spanish is where, but asking like learning how to find where the bathroom is, where a street is, how to ask for help, how to call the police, where's the closest hospital. Things like those are important things to like put into your phone and have. Um, where's the pharmacy? Because they're just common things that you may need to ask somebody. So those are my thoughts about travel. I think it's if you're moving somewhere, you have to try to learn the local language. And I figure and give yourself grace that it's going to take you a couple years. You're not going to be fluent in 1 year. I mean, unless you're a polyglot or you do a full immersion, which is possible. You do that. You go live with a family or something like that, and that might help. But if you're just if you move somewhere and you only interact with people who are American, you'll never learn the language. So my biggest piece of advice is make friends that are local people, and I think it'll be much better for you. I'm planning to take a sabbatical in 1 to 2 years. In the meantime, I'm investing in myself and still deciding on how I want to make money online. Yes, analysis paralysis is real. It really is. Um, Renaissance of consciousness. I decided about 2 months ago, and then I went to plan. Girl, you sound like me. I went to I had been thinking about it for a while, but once I decided I was doing it, I did the Exodus Summit. I started traveling because it was COVID, so I could travel to work from other places because everybody was working at home. Um, and I was working in international development, so I had the benefit of doing that. And I decided in September 2020 that I was moving, and I moved Mother's Day 2021. So it wasn't a long period between when I decided and when I actually pulled the trigger. Because you can spend a whole lot of time talking about it and not doing anything. So I encourage you, if you're gonna do it, don't navel gaze and don't dawdle. Okay, what about money? Can I keep my bank account? Now, this is turning into a how to move to Mexico thing, and this is a conversation about dating. So I'm not answering any more questions about how to move to Mexico because there are lots and lots of videos on YouTube that will answer all these questions about. Now, if you're asking me, because this is definitely a move abroad question, this is not a question about traveling. Yeah. So there are Facebook groups. I definitely think if you're not an Exodus Summit on Facebook, you should join the Exodus Summit group. And then if you know exactly where you're planning to move to, then join some groups for people that are living in the country. And the answers to all those questions will be in there. Because I don't want this to turn into how do I move abroad conversation. Because I have a lot of personal feelings about things that people should be thinking about when they're moving abroad that I'm not going to get into because I've made videos about those and why I do not to encourage people to move to Mexico and why I don't encourage people to do those things. Plus, there are lots and lots of people doing it. So there are lots of great videos about questions. But it is 7 o'clock, so I'm getting ready to stop talking. But I hope that I've given you guys something to think about in terms of dating. Even over 40 and 50 when you're traveling, I definitely think it is something that you should consider. I mean, don't do anything that makes you feel uncomfortable. But if you're comfortable and you have thought about wanting to do it, but didn't do it because you were worried about different things, I hope that I've given you stuff that you could think about so that you don't feel as worried about dating while you are traveling. Whether you're whether you're going out on a date, whether you're on group trip with your friends, or whether you are solo traveling and decide that you want to go out on a date while you're on solo travel. Sorry, not specifically, Max. I just meant like staying monthly, but I do want to talk about dating. You're welcome. But definitely, I'm not a slow traveler per se. Sometimes I go places. Usually, if I travel to multiple places in a certain period of time. But I wouldn't say I'm a person that goes and travels and stays somewhere for a month. I've done it, but it's not really how I travel. I usually will go somewhere for 10 days or so, and then I'll go somewhere else. But yeah. if you're traveling, it's really important. Where if you're traveling to Europe, how you deal with money is different if you're traveling to Europe than if you're traveling to Africa, for example. Um, or if you're traveling in, like in a lot of countries in Europe, you don't even need money. You could just use your credit card. Then there are other places like Portugal where having cash is still something that people prefer. In Mexico, people still prefer cash over credit cards. But if you're in London, for example, so there are a lot of places that don't even take cash, right? And France, you can use your credit card. So it really depends. While in Africa, I tended to use more cash there. And then you want to be careful about how much money you take out because you may find that you can't change the currency when you leave because no one will take it. So I can do a video if it would be helpful about money and traveling because that's a whole topic that I can talk about. Some of the things you need to think about in terms of cash and exchanging cash when you're traveling, things like that, because there are lots of different things to consider based on where you live. So I will put that down as a topic to do a video about because there's so many things that come into play in terms of traveling and currency. But if you're asking about moving abroad and how to deal with money because you're going to be living in another country, there are lots of groups, like I said, that you can actually don't even need to ask the question. You just put the question in the search bar in the group and all the answers will come up about how to deal with your US bank account and taking money out and so on. But when you're traveling and dealing with money, that's a whole different story. So I would be happy to do a video about you know dealing with money and traveling and some of the pros, the things that you need to think about um, in terms of currency and currency exchange. Because I learned a lot. Some things were harder lessons than others about around money and traveling and exchanging and when to exchange the money and all these kinds of things. Because, for example, I found that when I left West Africa and went to East Africa, I couldn't change at the airport. I couldn't change the currency from the West African country in East Africa. So I should have changed it before I left, but it was early in the morning and nothing was open. So I still have this currency that I have not been able to change. Thankfully, it's not a lot, but it's still there. I'm probably going to do it at a currency exchange place in the US because there are places in the US that I could take it to and I'll get pennies on the dollar, but they'll at least exchange it. But I could not change it when I got to East Africa. What I found was like in East Africa, they were willing to change money from specific countries in East Africa. For example, in Tanzania, they would take Kenyan money, but they really wanted USD, euros, and Japanese yen. And they would change Tanzanian money and they would change Kenyan money, but they wouldn't take any currency and this is in the airport, right? From anywhere in West Africa. So I'm happy to do a video to like talk about some of the stuff that you would want to think about based on some of the countries that I've been to and in terms of the difficulty of exchanging money. And then you leave and you go to another country and they won't take it at all, right? So you end up possibly having to go to a currency exchange place where you won't get a very good rate, but they will take the money in the US. Or some banks, there are issues with banks too. So I'm happy to tell you guys like some of the things that I've experienced and how to resolve some of them or avoid some of them. Money and traveling video, yes, I will do that. And heading to Puerto Vallarta at the end of the month. I love Puerto Vallarta. I love Puerto Vallarta. I'm actually planning a trip to Puerto Vallarta myself. That's cool. I love Puerto Vallarta. You will enjoy Puerto Vallarta. I think I've done a blog post about Puerto Vallarta. I like Puerto Vallarta a lot. It's one of my favorite, like beach. If you're going to the beach, it's one of my favorite places in Mexico, like beach towns in Mexico. So I think you'll have a really good time. Go to what is that place? Toucans. Why am I not remembering the name? Tommy Toucans? What's the name of that place? It's my favorite breakfast place in Puerto Vallarta. Toucans is a part of the name. Toucan. Is it Tommy Toucans? I can't remember. Johnny Toucan, something like that. But they have really good breakfast there. They have really good breakfast there. So if you're in Puerto Vallarta, and then the Blue Shrimp has a really great seafood soup that I love. And it's right on the Malecon. It's right on the beach. And then there's a really good taco place. But I did a blog post. So if you go on my website, I did a whole blog post about places to eat and things to do in Puerto Vallarta. It's like one of my favorite places. Anyway, I hope this video was helpful, and that you learned some things about dating and traveling. And you guys have given me, I mean, this topic came from the live I did last week, and you guys have given me some topics for future lives. I will not be going live over the next 2 weeks because I will be traveling. So I won't be going live for the next 2 weeks, but then I'll be back in 2 weeks, and I will add the money and traveling definitely to the list of things to talk about. As always, I thank you guys for following me. Thank you guys for being here, for participating, for asking great questions. And I hope everybody has a good night, and I will see you guys in the next live in 2 weeks. Okay? Have a good night wherever you guys are. Oh, and don't forget, I always forget to do these things. I'm very bad about it. But don't forget to check out the website because there are lots of information about some of the questions that you guys asked about some Puerto Vallarta, for example. There are lots of really great groups on Facebook. I have a group, and you can find the link in the description to this video, for Black women who love solo travel or aspire to solo travel. And then I always highly recommend the Exodus Summit group as well. And then there are lots of other groups based on, places that you're interested in traveling to. So definitely, and also please do, KB reminded me, please hit the like button before you go. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy my content. Please share it with other people if you enjoy it. I'm a terrible self promoter. And I look forward to seeing you guys in about 2 weeks. And then I'll get to tell you guys what I've been up to and where I went and what I was doing. All righty. Bye-bye. Have a good night.